But we begin this hour with President Trump's retribution campaign, which his allies continue to help carry out. New reporting by the New York Times revealed that for the past year, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago has been investigating a Democratic fundraising firm once co-owned by Lauren Mershon, the daughter of the judge in Trump's hush money trial in New York. That's according to court filings of people familiar with the inquiry. According to a grand jury subpoena reviewed by the Times, the firm Authentic Campaigns, Inc. was directed last August to turn over a wide range of internal communications with clients that included communications with former Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Joe Biden, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, and the Democratic National Committee. Lauren Mershon was also on the list. As the New York Times points out, quote, the Mershon family has been a frequent target of Trump and his allies who have made unsubstantiated claims that the judge was out to get him and that his daughter profited from accusations aired at the trial. All of this comes as the Washington Post also reports that the U.S. Attorney for D.C., Jeanine Pirro, has convened a special grand jury in Washington. No one knows yet what the new special grand jury will be looking into, but it's clearly a significant move given Trump's penchant for going after his political opponents and the fire that she is under with Donald Trump right now. Joining us at the table, James Sample, law professor at Hofstra University and author of Who Decides on Substack, and George Conway, co-founder of the Lincoln Project. Thank you both for joining us at the table, especially. I want to start with this Democratic firm that they're looking into, Professor. I want to read a little bit more from the New York Times. Quote, in this case, prosecutors sought the subpoena that came from a criminal referral from Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee. The language in the subpoena is virtually identical to claims made by the House committee that Trump's conviction in the hush money trial presided over by Judge Mershon was potentially politically motivated. The panel made the referral after Mike Nellis, he's the founder of Authentic Campaigns, refused to provide the committee with confidential emails it was seeking, including those between Ms. Mershon and her father. This is not new. Donald Trump going after people he feels like wronged him, whether it's true or not, if most of these people are just doing their jobs. It also doesn't seem to be the case that I don't think he really cares whether or not people actually end up in jail, even if they go on trial. It's the name and shame game. And I'm curious, as you hear about this new element of this, what are your thoughts?
Well, one, when you hear House Judiciary Committee, this came from Jim Jordan, in essence. And what you have is a press release from the House Judiciary Committee, a political document that was turned into a grand jury subpoena. And you ran through the list. The scope of this, what they were seeking, was enormous. Mm-hmm. It covered basically the entire landscape of the Democratic Party, and it covered the daughter of the judge who tried the Trump case, right? So ultimately, all of that, once there was pushback, got narrowed down to a $468 receipt and an emails between Judge Mershon and his daughter. That is the exact opposite. That is the inverse of how prosecutions work. Prosecutions and investigations start with facts and expand to theories. This was the ultimate fishing expedition, and it ends up being next to nothing. But to your point, Eugene, the cost imposed on the individuals is the real end game. It is not conviction, and we've seen that their record would indicate, right? If winning in court was the end game, they would give up because they are at this point, give them John Bolton. They're 1 in 100, let's say, right? So if winning in court was the end game, they would have given up long ago. Those other 99 cases, the 99 cases where they've ultimately lost, in essence, they're still imposing personal cost, they're still imposing fear, and they're still creating chilling effects for everyone who knows that they might otherwise cross them.
Well, and how many cases do you think there are that we don't yet even know about? And I mean, the fact that we're only hearing about this example now with such a high-profile person whom Trump had repeatedly attacked, even at the time. I just wonder, George,
Yeah, we probably actually know most, because I think the best defense If I got a subpoena tomorrow, I'd be on this show. I'd be on Morning Joe tomorrow morning, waving the subpoena around and making fun of him. And I think that's actually one of the best defenses that you have against this weaponization of the legal process. And this is really as extreme an example as we have seen, and we have seen some extreme examples. I mean, this judge, I sat through large chunks of that criminal trial. He was fair, right down the middle. He was the perfect judge, perfect demeanor for a case that was obviously going to be quite contested. And not only that, it's not uncommon for judges to have relatives who are involved in other things like politics. I mean, there was this woman on the there's this woman on the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit who passed away a couple of years ago. Her name was Marianne Trump Barry. Okay, Trump sister. And, nobody questioned her integrity. She was a great judge, a well-respected judge on the Third Circuit. Governor Rendell's wife was actually a judge on that same circuit. Nobody questioned her integrity. And the only reason why we're questioning why they're questioning this man's integrity is because he happened to sit on a case where Donald Trump was guilty. Because he paid off a porn star and then committed fraud on the books of his New York State corporations, which is illegal and should have been prosecuted years before by the federal government for campaign finance fraud.
And George, we can't expect that the pace of these weaponization cases that it's going to diminish or slow down at all. Now that we have a new Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who, gave his big kumbaya, he wants justice speech to rally all the employees at Department of Justice. Do you have any predictions for his tenure?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, that speech he gave was just pure gaslighting.
Yeah,
okay. He basically.
We have that.
Oh, please, let's light the gas.
The president feels very strongly, as do I, that there were people who were victims of a Department of Justice that was absolutely weaponized. And he feels very strongly that he would want to make them whole, as do I. But it will not be through the Anti-Weaponization Fund, which, again, was never set up.
Oh, I feel that the president has such feelings for these people. He's so empathetic.
For his empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is just gaslighting. I mean, first of all, that order that he signed doesn't have that effect because there's a contract between the United States government, which ought to be illegal, which the courts have held to be illegal, a settlement contract that still is binding, and his purported order doesn't do anything about that. But your point is right. He's just going to keep doing that because that's his job. That's what got him where he's going, where he is now.
I also, though, interpreted the Todd Blanche speech as an attempt, a very heavy-handed attempt to prevent more resignations and people from leaving to actually execute the work, even if these are just weaponized prosecutions that Trump wants done. Because from what we've all been hearing, and now specifically even people who tried to make it to the midterms seeking new jobs, dedicated public servants, it feels like there's been a real exodus from the DOJ.
There's an adverse selection dynamic at play. I mean, it goes in multiple directions. You lose some of your best people either because they've resigned or because you fired them for doing something principled. You get
doing their jobs.
And for doing their jobs, you get
cases.
An applicant pool that is radically different than it ever used to be in the Department of Justice or
I just got a targeted ad to become a special agent at the FBI.
The way to
do not click on that.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
You have good sunglasses? That'll do.
She does. We'll get them for
I'd be an excellent agent.
No, I mean, the way to become an AUSA now, used to be one of the most credentialed students in your law school, go to a firm, have a great practice reputation. Now it's, can you slide into the DMs of the right political, apparatchik?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really, it is this adverse selection that we see it the entire administration.
But that feels like, part of it that may be what they want. They may want to get the people that are principled out there. So it's
but the problem is there aren't enough of them.
Yeah.
Amazingly.
At this point, I do want to, Todd Blanche is on Meet the Press. Mm-hmm. If not right now, the interview has already happened. And he said he would not pledge that he would be independent of the White House, despite being his former personal lawyer. Quote, "No, I'm not going to pledge that, and no attorney general should ever pledge that." I just don't. And George.
Well, look, I mean, in ordinary times, there's a duality. Yes, the attorney general is responsible to the president of the United States constitutionally, legally, and politically and practically. But part of the job of the president is to make sure that law enforcement isn't politicized, which requires a certain degree of independence, which is why there have been these norms that have developed that now, hopefully in the future, we can codify, that about, whether the White House can interfere with political prosecutions, as Nixon did with Watergate and as Trump has repeatedly done many times over, with persecution of his enemies.
Yeah, pick a list, pick a person. Professor, there's a lot of this is because that independence is important for many reasons. But one of the main reasons, you tell me if I'm right or wrong, is that the Department of Justice may end up investigating the president at some point, or a former, DOJ, or the president's son, as they did with Joe Biden's son, Hunter. Like, the reason that you have to have at least the appearance, like at least pretend that you don't work for the man, is because at some point you may have to investigate an ally, a child, or the president themselves.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And George and I might differ on this a little bit. I think what Blanche is doing when he phrases things in that way is he is essentially trying to take the norms that George referenced. And those are really the only things that have created that duality. And he is trying to double down on the unitary executive theory. He sees the role of the attorney general as being the president's lawyer, full stop. This is a man who went to the Federalist Society and said, "We are at war with the judges." You are literally an officer of the court. You're not at war with the judges who are upholding the rule of law. That is taking the unitary executive to the extreme, and it is obliterating norms. It speaks to the challenge. It speaks to the problem of only having norms to fight, right? Norms are the BB gun against the howitzer right now.
Yeah, I don't know that we're disagreeing. I mean, I think, we can debate the unitary executive theory and what it means and everything like that. But the real fundamental problem is, unitary or not, we have a corrupt executive who doesn't follow the rules, the Constitution, and his oath of office.
James Sample and George Conway, unitary executive theory debate to be continued. Thank you so much for coming to the table this morning.